right, let's take a look at this example together. We want to factor fully 2x squared minus x minus 3. So this is a trinomial of the form ax squared plus bx plus c, where a is the number, the coefficient in front of x squared, so that's 2. B is the coefficient that's in front of x, so that's a negative 1. Don't let that negative fool you, there's a 1 there. And then c is the constant term that's by itself, so that's negative 3. We know we should be able to factor this into a px plus m and a qx plus n. So some number x plus m, some number x plus n. So pretty much two linear terms. So think back to the previous lesson. This p and this q, these are the coefficients in front of x. So when we multiply them, we get an x squared, meaning that p times q has to equal a. And m and n, these are our constant terms. When you multiply them, you should get the constant term in our trinomial, meaning that m times n is negative 3. And then our crisscross product has to add up to negative 1. So first, I'm going to show you the method using a factoring box, and then after, I'll show you another method using a different visualization tool. So using my factoring box, I know that I have a 2x squared here and a negative 3. So I'm going to start with my ax squared. What two things multiply to give me 2x squared? Well, that's going to be a 2x times a 1x, because together that gives us our 2x squared. Now let's think of different numbers that multiply to the negative 3. Well, I could have a negative 3, positive 1. I can have a positive 3, negative 1. I can have a 1, negative 3. Or I can have a negative 1, positive 3. So there's 4 different scenarios here, and sometimes there's going to be more. So this is why factoring these harder trinomials becomes a little bit more complicated, because there's so many different possibilities. But that's okay, let's try through each one. So if I multiply them through, for the first case, we have a negative 3 times x, so that's negative 3x. And then in this box, we have 2x times 1, so that's positive 2x. Let's look at the second case. We have 3 times x, that's 3x. 2x times negative 1, that's negative 2x. Over here, we have 1 times x, that's 1x. 2x times negative 3 is negative 6x. And our last case, we have negative 1 times x, that's negative x. And 2x times 3, which is 6x. Now, you might be asking, Jess, out of all 4 of these, how do we know which one's correct? Well, if you look back at the question, we need the crisscross product to add up to negative 1, or negative 1x. So if I look at these guys, look at the diagonal here. Which combination adds up to negative 1x? That's the one that we want. So it seems like number 1 is our winner here, because negative 3x plus 2x is indeed negative x. So then the factored form is going to be our 2x minus 3 and x plus 1. So a little bit more trial and error, but if you list them all out and calculate all of them, you should be able to find the one that you need. And in practice, you would go one at a time. And if you're lucky, you should find the correct one before you reach all 4 possibilities. Now I'm going to show you another method to visualize this and see how we can factor this harder trinomial. So we want to factor this trinomial. First thing you're going to do is find 2 things that multiply to 2x squared. So that's 2x times x. Technically, you could have negative 2x times negative x, but remember, as long as our a value is positive, we usually just consider positive px and positive qx's. Then again, we need to break down this negative 3. I'm going to do it in a slightly different order than we did in method number 1. So let's first consider maybe 1 and negative 3, and then after maybe negative 1 and positive 3. And then maybe we have negative 3, positive 1, and then 3 and negative 1. So those are the 4 possibilities. Now we need to do a crisscross product. So x times 1, that is 1x. 2x times negative 3, that's negative 6x. Then you ask yourself, does x plus negative 6x give you the middle term, which is negative x? Well, it doesn't. X plus negative 6x is not negative x, so this doesn't work. So if it doesn't work, we clear all of this middle stuff, and then we move on to the next set of numbers. So x times negative 1, that's negative x. 2x times 3, that's 6x. And we ask ourselves, does negative x plus 6x, does that equal our middle term, negative x? Again, it doesn't, so guess what? We are going to clear everything in the middle again, and then move on to the next term. So x times negative 3 is negative 3x. 2x times 1, that's positive 2x. Let's add these up. Does that give us our middle term, negative x? Yes, it does. So then we know our factor is going to be 2x minus 3 and x plus 1. So it factors into 2x minus 3, x plus 1. And then we can stop there. We don't need to keep going with the crisscross products.